sometimes when I wake up really early, my mind gets really sad because it wants to be in bed, I think. So something in me goes, oh, I feel kind of depressed. But then it is just that I'm tired. And then, so I woke up, felt like I didn't know who I was, where I was. And my window was open and I have these seagulls who are just having a party every day outside my window. And they were having a go at each other. It was lovely to listen to. And I went out of bed. I accidentally was too late, so I just put on this... I'm literally wearing a wedding dress to the people who cannot see but hear. I'm wearing a wedding dress. And then I just jumped into a cab. Had a beautiful time on the plane. The clouds looked so gorgeous. I almost cried, or I did cry, let's be honest. It's an honesty time here. But I did cry on the plane because the clouds just looked like... I just understood why we would imagine people who die going to heaven there. Because it just looked like the most perfect place. It all made sense.
It's no wonder we have these sort of like deeply emotional moments sometimes on aeroplanes. It seems to I think it's a mixture of the sort of wonder of being like, I'm 35,000 feet in the sky looking over the world, and also the lack of oxygen, or the sort of recycled oxygen, where you're just like, you just suddenly feel like super emotional.
Yeah, it's super hot.
Yeah, it really is. There's so much depth to get into in terms of talking about this new album that you've made.
Yes.
I wondered how it's been talking about the record so far, because it is an album that, I don't know, it feels like a sort of an invitation to get into some really deep topics and some deep reflections on where you're at, but also kind of where the world's at the moment.
It's not difficult per se, but it's per se. I never say that. But anyways, it's not difficult, but it's exhausting, but in the same way as running is. So you feel kind of wonderful after, but it feels like a workout for the mind and the heart. Just these are very big, vast things that I'm trying to explain even more specifically than with my music, which first is my best try at explaining what's going on in my head is the album itself. And then comes my second try in explaining that again. I learn a lot about myself and what I really mean and how I should speak to people about important things, because the words you choose are very important. Words are like weapons, and the small changes can make a very big difference.
The album's called
What Happened to the Heart.
Indeed it is. I remember when you first started releasing music off this album, or that you kind of like started speaking to your audiences about the fact there was going to be new music to come, you were very open about the fact you were like releasing music into this moment where there's sort of like a lot of deep, deep pain in the world, division, polarization. There's so much to be upset about, really, that you were kind of like you felt torn. You were in two minds as to whether this was the right moment to sort of like share music in the first instance.
Well, the world has been going through a crisis for many, many, many years all over the world. But it seems to humankind that whenever the pain around us is far away, in a very outer circle, we don't really care about it. We are really brought up, especially in the Western world, to really, or basically everywhere, to only care about our inner circle, our blood, our neighbor, and that's it. Not even our neighbor, actually, just our blood. And then with the world's involvement and with the internet, you would think that circle would expand much more of how far we can stretch our empathy. But our empathy doesn't stretch far at all, it seems like, because we're letting the planet die, we're letting children die. We are making fun of the people who are trying to call out that how we are like what we're doing in the world now is wrong and so disconnected. So it's a very like, even though the world has been going through so much pain for so many years, now it's even more vibrant on our phones with Palestine and Gaza, which is just another example of a whole people in pain, far from our reach, but still the importance of raising our voices on others' behalf is more important than ever. It's like we are given a chance to really see how people are being treated. And so many people are quiet, which completely blows my mind. And then when the world is going through, when it feels like the world is burning, which in some parts it literally is, it's hard to think about, or I become very existential. It's hard to think about small things like clothes and interviews or promoting your, like, it just seems like shit to me.
There are so much bigger things out there that need our attention and our energy. And that I totally understand that some of those things can sort of feel maybe inconsequential in comparison, but I think they're still important. I absolutely love the album. I feel like it's really radical, like a really radical album that I don't know whether people consider like Aurora like a radical voice, like in terms of your artistry and also your kind of like, you know, using your voice in interviews or whatever. But for me, like the album's really radical because it's kind of, I think you're sharing thoughts on something that's so central, like that central question of like what happened to the heart, like is really a kind of like a question about sort of the evolution of humanity, right?
Yes.
So like how we've got to this point, like how have we got to the point where there's a genocide happening, you know, a few thousand miles away from us, but yet we feel disconnected from that, or that doesn't feel like our reality, or we feel powerless. Presumably a lot of the feelings and the thoughts that have gone into this album have been kind of swirling around in your head for probably a number of years. But then from what I understand, it was a couple of years ago where you kind of, you read a text that was co-written by a collection of Indigenous activists. And it really spoke to you. And it obviously kind of like, was that a moment where almost like pieces of a jigsaw kind of came together and you thought, no, what I really am asking the question is, what happened to the heart of humanity? What happened to empathy and compassion to sort of get to the root of like, how do we find ourselves here now?
Well, I'm always, these important spiritual parts of my being, empathic parts of my being, who are very aware of interconnectedness and coexistence, and, you know, I'm here with people, I need to be here with people. And it's not about me, it's about us, and blah, blah, blah. That part wakes up and goes to sleep all your life, because it's not possible to be on it all the time. And sometimes because of the pleasures of the world or the agony of the world can easily make you forget about that spiritual part of yourself for a little bit, and then it reawakens, and that's how it is. But in the COVID times, it really woke up. It shook my core. Oh my God, look how vulnerable we are, and how we are reacting to having a common enemy, someone who is against all of us, a disease. And I was like, oh my God, look, it feels like the world is more in touch with things. But then it just went back to normal. And it wasn't a day that happened, but I just kind of slowly noticed the world just going back to normal. And it actually really broke my heart on behalf of my nephew, children who are young still, 1 year old. It really made me sad to see that not even something like that can shake us enough to actually permanently change the things we need so desperately to change. I didn't know what to do with that, and that highly affected the way I wrote, the way I lived, the way I looked at people. And then I waited until my mind was filled with enough light optimism and hope and love. So it's because I don't like to write in destructive states of mind, because then I feel like the music becomes very dark, which I like, but dark in the wrong way. So I waited until I felt ready, and then one day I was, as I found the title of the album, What Happened to the Heart, just as I was writing just as I was reading the letter, We Are the Earth, pledging for the world to act more with the heart and less with the mind. And I completely agree. Whoever led us here fucked us all up, because this world isn't doing good for over half of us. So whoever led us here didn't really do a good job. And if the abilities we value in our leaders are strong-opinioned, strong-minded, determined, a bit cold, not too emotional, loud, while we are completely lacking in this world a touch that is emotional, empathic, caring, motherly, feminine, which makes sense because women haven't been able to lead the world the last 10,000 years, except for a few queens and Cleopatra.
I remember having a great conversation with the artist Anoni, who performs as Anoni in the Johnsons at the moment. And Anoni was saying that to fix what's happening, particularly with global heating and climate change, is we need radical new leadership, but we also need feminine energy to come to the forefront. And we need an overhaul of the systems that we know have not been working now for centuries. We need a different type of leadership, and what we need is so many more women in positions of leadership, not just in climate, but in politics, in our economics, in our businesses, in our communities. Like, we need that at the forefront. That is the change that we need. And we also need to have a recognition that the way that we've done it has not worked. So why not? Let's embrace that change. And that was Anoni's feeling on that. And it was really resonant. And you kind of it's very hard to I would love to see that happen.
I know. Well, it's very obvious that what we crave is balance in all things, And now it's so unbalanced because women, luckily, a lot of women who have invented things, they got the chance to invent things. They just didn't get to have the credit for it. But at least they got to invent them, which have also helped driving the world forward. But it's funny when we crave balance and justice, the people who experienced peace were the people on the top, while the same peace for the people at the bottom were oppression. And when the oppressed starts rioting, you treat them as terrorists, Or when the oppressed starts rioting, we treat it as something out of the blue and something unjustified, something hostile, when all they're asking for is peace for them as well, for us as well. It's the same that's happening in Palestine and Israel. We are blaming a group of people who have been oppressed for being terrorists when 15 years ago, when or maybe not, it's a long thing to go into, so maybe not that, but we are blaming groups who are trying to fight for peace for all and not understanding why they turned out like they did. Because every oppressed group has to riot somehow, and if something or someone doesn't listen to them ever, it will eventually turn into war. It will turn bad in human history. So the sooner we listen to the oppressed, whoever that is, and we realize that even though I experienced this time as peaceful, it's not peace for everyone. Peace is an useless word to many. We need liberation, and balance is much more. And I feel like many people are reacting to women asking for peace, for balance, with feeling very threatened, which is also enhancing the division and making everything even more unstable. Men more unstable. The leaders men vote are very unstable men.
When you sort of focused on that fundamental question of like what happened to the heart in humanity, you went away and you kind of like studied and you read. What did you discover? And did we have it? Did we lose it?
I think you see proof that we had it, whatever it is, and that we've always had it. Because we have these abilities to hold each other, look at each other, we make each other laugh, and that makes us happy. We make art, we make food. It's just amazing the things we do as a species. I find it incredibly beautiful. Food, art, music has always been there. Family, community, villages, driving the world forward, driving our family forward, expanding, all of these things that kind of we have valued throughout history. But what do we value now? It's total shit. To be famous on an app, it blows my mind. Famous shit. Contributing to the world is beautiful, and we can all do that.
It sounds like one of the big questions that almost splintered off your exploration of the album title was this idea of like, when did human contentment change? You know, a good life wasn't a life full of things. Like a good life was a life full of heart and love. And yet you're right, like that's sort of gone away now. And we all feel, a lot of us feel lonely. We don't feel like society's serving us. We don't feel like our communities are serving us. We don't feel like we're being paid fairly, and like just this sense of like kind of human brokenness seems to be sort of omnipresent. And I think it does come back a lot to that question that you raised there around like contentment, about what are the things you truly need in your life to be like, I've got everything I need. This is the best of what I ever need, is because I've got my dog and my cat and my garden and I'm my community and I'm happy.
But like kids now, 19-year-olds, I feel like they, in a new way, are just really unsure if they'll ever afford that with how things are going in the world. And it's just interesting to see how we're holding just human contentment, good word, out of humans' reach. I have a song called Starvation, which I've made a video for, where I'm picturing just this image, you'll notice. Because we are making people dream about so much that we forget to just, that what makes us happy is to do something that is useful. I don't know why we make offices so boring. It's like prison. It's just like prisons. Look at these buildings. We're sitting just next to this iron square buildings. It looks like prisons where people are just trapped inside, making their whole life just pass through their fingers. How do we get here? But also, dear listener, to whoever is listening, and if you made it this far, thank you.
And we're still here, by the way. We haven't melted away
We
yet.
haven't evaporated or died. And neither will you. Together we shall prevail. No, but really, I know this, just to you specifically who's listening, I know this sounds like a lot. And it is a lot. But I think it's small things and big things about the world who made me ask the question, what happened to the heart? But I wouldn't ask the question if I didn't believe that it would serve a purpose, that there would be people out there who would feel the same, and that we could actually do something. So I don't ask it because I'm pessimistic. A tad disappointed maybe. But it's absolutely because I am optimistic. I just know we got into a deep hole there. And I don't want you to fall into the hole along with everyone else. I want you to do the exact opposite. And to get off the phone as well. Stretch your spine. Eat something beautiful. Make something from scratch. And feel how good it feels to eat something you've made. I don't know. I just felt like I had to say something beautiful amongst all the hell I was raising on this podcast.
We've been raising hell. If we need humanity to rediscover heart in our systems and in our decision making, what signs have you seen of the heart like emerging and you kind of being, when you went on this journey of kind of like asking that question? It sounds like, and you've kind of called for a sort of, we need like a small revolution, we do need a step change in our thinking.
Absolutely.
So what signs do you see of encouragement that might happen?
I think the people we surround ourselves with, the people we look up to, and then making sure you become a person you will look up to as well in this life. Okay, there's a monster here, but that's fine.
We just had like
I feel
the room
like,
is speaking to us.
Yes. How I judge people and what happened to the heart is how we behave to everyone who we don't hear. Do we punish them for simply existing, for being smaller, for being weaker, for speaking in a language we don't understand? Do we simply take and punish the earth just because she begs for help in a language we don't even hear, most of us? Do we do these things simply because it doesn't look like our actions has any consequences? I don't know how to say that word.
Yeah, consequences.
Oh, it sounds so weird in my mouth. Okay, it tastes weird. But is it simply because we can? And why? That's how I judge people. It's about and I feel like the few things left in this earth that talks in a language that wakes us up is food and music and art and nature and people. I need to look at all these 5 things and think, if the only music I listen to has no soul, because there is so much music with no soul. I've heard it, so have you. There's food without soul.
Yeah.
There are people that doesn't inspire your soul. And all these things, I just want to make sure we surround ourselves with also role models that does something to us. Stop watching the Kardashians and watch yourself in the mirror, bitch. But like, I feel like it's important because we're about to completely surround ourselves with this important language that has nothing to say. And then we're just dead. And I think we need to really rethink our influences, especially the food we eat. Oh my God. Make sure it's connected to the earth. And I really think it's going to make us feel better. We need to stop being on our phones.
Yeah.
What the fuck? Why are they? And all of this is very connected to the album as well. These are all things that I've been thinking about a lot while writing.
You spoke there about soul. Like one of the tracks on the album is A Soul With No King. Yeah,
this is exactly about that.
Yeah. I wanted to ask about, so we had Brian Eno on the podcast a couple of weeks ago.
Oh, beautiful.
Yeah. And Brian Eno spoke about you. Do you want me to play the clip of Brian Eno talking about you?
Oh, yes.
Would you like to hear this?
Yes.
This is good. Okay,
My darling.
So listeners, this is because I know you really got on well and you had a great time together.
Oh, yeah, we have a beautiful connection. He feels like a soulmate.
Yeah. This is Brian Eno talking about Aurora, and here we go.
One is with the Norwegian singer Aurora, who's one of the most extraordinary people I've ever met. Absolutely original human being. You just think, Who designed her?
Yeah, she's a lot of fun to hang out with, isn't she?
She's such a one-off, wonderful person.
Oh, my heart.
Yeah, how
Beautiful.
if people haven't listened to that episode yet, do go and check it out. But you came together, yourself and Brian have moved in the same circles for a few years now, and you came to collaborate together musically on a track that appears on the album, but you did a kind of a reversion of it, if you like, that you included nature as a contributor, and this was part of the Sounds Right campaign that Brian was talking about on the podcast a few weeks ago. Tell me a little bit about working with Brian, getting to actually, make some music with him, because I know you've had plenty of conversation with him over the years. It becomes kind of clear listening to you and all the conversation, hopefully, that we've had here of why you wanted to bring nature into the process and give her the credit that she deserves and be part of that that whole initiative. But just, what do you make of Brian's comments about working with you and getting to know you, and also the experience of working with him?
Oh, it absolutely moves my heart. I love Brian. He and I, since we met, we just felt like we had the need to talk about the same things. And he has so much, I feel like he can teach me and the world. He speaks in a way that feels like really food for the soul. And I completely adore him, and he's a genius. He's made a whole genre. And I'm very honored to call him a friend now. We laugh a lot. And sometimes I feel like we act like a really old married couple. Like, I'm like, Brian, this is... And he's like trying to find it. And I'm like, no, it's not there. Come out again. Don't... This is... I think it's... And he's like, oh, so I'm gonna... Like, we're a bit like...
I would watch a sitcom of you and Brian Eno. That's the next big sitcom.
Yes, it seems just a bit like... Because we're both very big friends. And also we have so much respect for each other. But we're also so, I don't know, we're very funny. I really love him. And to work with him has been a dream. And to work with Frederick, who plays the mandolin, has been a dream. And just Brian's whole initiative to not only talk, dream, care, write for and about nature, but actually do something real that you can touch is important. You can't only be yapping about change. You need to make change as well. And I like the balance between the dreaming and the realism of how you approach the things you care about. That was a very good way to go ask about that song, because it was about exactly what I was talking about earlier. Beautiful.
Good. And musically... the album is so diverse. Like, we hear Aurora going to the club because we've got like techno in there. We've got some like disco that I just imagine kind of one of those like light up floors, like that you'd get to like stepping into like Saturday Night Fever or something. And we have like the sounds that like some like particularly like early fans might associate with you, like the kind of folk and the sort of and things like that. And this feels like you really, really kind of just going out there and just like painting with all the colours that you have in terms of the music. Does that feel fair?
Yeah, I always do that. I like when the album feels like a whole person that kind of demands you to listen a bit, kind of grabs your attention, and is very like in the way. He's very there, and a lot. Because people are very diverse. They deserve diverse music and diverse album. Ugh, I don't know how to say that, but they deserve it, and I want to make people or music for people who I want to make the kind of music I feel like people deserve. You treat, like Leonard Cohen said, you treat your audience like kings, and they will treat you the same back. It's important. But even though I know I've said I have 8 things to say, and now I'm on my 4th,
Yeah.
And some chapters might take 2 albums to speak about, like chapter 2, step 1 and 2. Now I'm on chapter 4. I don't know how long it will take me to finish what I have to say, because this topic burns in my belly just from the same place where my laughter comes from, and my voice is from the same place. But still, even though I know what I'm about to say, it's all very foretold, but it still feels very playful and in the moment. So the album is all over the place because I am.